What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Michael and welcome to Fudge Muppet. Today we're going to be taking a trip back to what is probably the most nostalgic Elder Scrolls game amongst the majority of intense Elder Scrolls fans. Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind is a video game like no other, an open world adventure into a landscape like nothing seen before. I must admit, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion was my first Elder Scrolls game, and as a result I'd say it's likely my favorite, but Morrowind just hits the spot on a completely different level, an extremely alien level that lets you enjoy getting lost in a very unfamiliar, expansive place. Going back and playing Morrowind is difficult for many people who had Skyrim as their first Elder Scrolls game due to the graphics and certain mechanics. For example, in Morrowind, not every hit landed, even if you did physically strike at the hitbox of your opponent. The success of your hits was based on your weapon skill and luck and agility attributes, and personally I didn't like this and would consider it a negative for the game. However, there are many areas where Morrowind outshone the other Elder Scrolls games, and if we compare it with Skyrim, there's around 3 areas I'd like to talk about. There's even more than this though, so if you want a part 2, do let me know. And don't get me wrong, Skyrim is obviously one of my favorite video games to ever exist, but Morrowind beats it in a handful of areas. I hope that Elder Scrolls 6 contains more of the things that made Morrowind so cool, while retaining the same features that made playing Skyrim so sensational. With that said, let's kick things off with the first thing Morrowind did better than Skyrim: unique races. Well, it had the exact same 10 awesome races, but they were more unique and could change the way you played as a result. We don't have time to go through every single race and all the differences, as there's just far too many, but here are a few examples so you can get the idea. Let's look at High Elves. In Skyrim, High Elves gained plus 50 magicka, a bunch of slightly improved starting skills, and the Highborn power, allowing them to regenerate magicka way faster for 60 seconds once per day. But in Morrowind, High Elves had a massive 150% increase in maximum magicka and a 75% resistance to common disease. That was a big advantage, but as a drawback, these Outma possess a 50% weakness to magicka and fire, and a 25% weakness to frost and shock. They are the masters of magic, but magic hurts them more than other races. They did also have other magical advantages, such as much larger bonuses to their mage skills. They had plus 10 to alchemy, destruction, and enchanting, and plus 5 to alteration, conjuration, and illusion. This amplifies the benefits and disadvantages of the race more than in Skyrim, where all races just have plus 5 to a bunch of skills and plus 10 to just one skill. Obviously, many people like the idea of more bland races in Skyrim, as they can make any race good at any build, but the same thing could be done in Morrowind. Things were just more pronounced if you chose to focus a race on becoming what their genetics were inclined towards. All races in Morrowind have this amplification when compared to Skyrim. For example, Nords actually got a full 100% resistance to frost, full-on immunity. They also got 50% resistance to shock, which made them pretty good against a lot of mages. In terms of powers, they could activate a shield on themselves for protection, and had a power called Thunder Fist, which, as the name does not suggest, let them do a touch-based frost damage attack, 25 points of damage to be exact. The list goes on for all the races, and even the beast races couldn't wear shoes or face-covering helmets. They were physically prevented by the way their faces were shaped and by their large feet. However, they had other advantages, such as plus 15 to acrobatics for Khajiit and plus 15 to athletics for Argonians. Add on the fact that all races had different attributes, an area of gameplay removed from Skyrim entirely, and also the fact that there were even slight differences between male and female, and it's all much more complex and in-depth. But besides the enhanced diversity within racial powers and bonuses, Morrowind also had a larger amount of unique gear, both in terms of actual amounts of unique items and also in terms of their particular effects. This is the second thing I'd like to talk about. Now, one of the things in Skyrim that was a slight issue was that you could use your smithing and enchanting skills to create gear that was far better than the unique items you could actually find. Even if this item was a weapon forged by a Daedric prince, you could forge something much more powerful yourself. This removed the incentive to use such weapons, although I still did use them because they were cool, but it would be even better if such weapons could not be replicated in terms of their power, or even at least just in terms of their actual effect. For example, if you watched our standalone Morrowind multiplayer Let's Play episode, Scott was wearing a unique robe called the Mantle of Woe. Besides looking super arcane and very unique, this pair of robes had a very interesting effect for the wearer. It boosted your conjuration by a massive 50 points, making even novice conjurers become become pretty powerful instantly. It also boosted your magicka by 50 points, helping even further. This is very neat, but it also had drawbacks such as draining personality, which was an attribute, giving you a weakness to normal weapons, and very notably doing 20 points of sun damage on you constantly. This meant that while the robes made you a beast mage, you could only use them properly at nighttime or indoors, as using them outdoors in the sun would cause you to eventually die in the heat. You don't find this kind of wacky tactical gear in Skyrim, and I'd really love to see more stuff like this in Elder Scrolls 6, in addition to all of the more basic unique stuff. There are long lists of examples like these. Another random one I could mention would be the unique glass claymore known as Magebane. This greatsword granted the user magical resistance, making it great for any warrior classes who would normally find themselves susceptible to magic users. In Skyrim you can get magic resistance, but only on armor. I thought it was cool that this was actually on a weapon you could use. The boots of Spring-Heeled Jack were cool in Oblivion, but in Morrowind there is an even more famous pair of shoes called the Boots of Blinding Speed. The name of these shoes is very literal, as you will actually be blind when you wear them, unable to see where you are going. The plus side is that these shoes give you 200 more points of speed, which is absolutely ridiculous. It made you stupidly fast, and what players figured out was that they could use enchantments to see better, allowing them to actually wear these boots without the same drawback. The variety of effects that items could have was mirrored in the magic system too. Morrowind had a huge variety of spells and 6 schools of magic. There was a levitate spell, teleportation based spells, and the ability to summon a full set of bound armor. The ability to silence mages so they couldn't cast spells. It was all just so diverse, and many of these spells were even in Oblivion but were then taken out in Skyrim. I love how restoration magic also gave you the ability to fortify your skills and attributes, so you could just be a full-on warrior, but then you use restoration magic, casting a spell to instantly enhance your capabilities, making you faster, stronger, and more agile. So we've gone through the unique races, gears, and spells that Morrowind had, but the final thing I want to talk about regarding what Morrowind did better than Skyrim is the factions, and in particular, the faction consequences. In Skyrim, you could join any faction you wanted to, regardless of their opinion of each other. The only time this didn't apply, of course, was between choosing the Stormcloaks and the Imperials, or the Dawnguard and the Vampires, but the reason for this was because they played through opposing sides of the exact same storyline. However, if you were a legate of the Imperial Legion, literally Tullius's right-hand man, you could just join the Dark Brotherhood and they'd accept you with open arms. Realistically, you'd imagine they wouldn't trust you, expecting you to simply attempt to abolish their faction instead of joining them. However, in-game this is not the case. In Morrowind, however, factions have rivalries, even ones that you can't join, and who you tie your allegiances to will influence how the other factions perceive you and treat you as a result. For example, the Mages Guild and House Telvanni have a very strong rivalry, and if you join one of these factions, the members of the other faction will not like you, and will definitely not be super happy to have you try and join their faction. Generally speaking, it's usually possible in Morrowind to join and progress through whatever factions you choose. However, this is only if you are aware of the conflicts at play and work around them, and I say usually because this is not always the case. Overall, this made the world in Morrowind feel much more in-depth and realistic, and it made you think harder about the values of the character you were role-playing before you just signed the waiver form to every single guild in the province. This also then incentivized more replayability, which is something else I really value. I'd explain more if it weren't for spoilers, but let's just say there are certain quests available that would prevent you from joining other factions. In conclusion, I think that the direction that Elder Scrolls needs to go to become even more sensational is looking back at some of the older games like Morrowind, taking the good things from that and then adding them back into what makes Skyrim one of the most amazing games ever. That will be a brilliant Elder Scrolls 6. Thank you so much for watching the video this far. I hope you enjoyed what I had to say, and I'd love to hear what you love about Morrowind in the comments below. Social media links are in the description, as is the link to our Patreon if you want to support our channel. My name's Michael, thanks again for all your support, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.